The Dragon Mating Manual entry is finally done. The Blitz Dragon entry took 4 months of my life. But why? Because in order to create the Blitz Dragon entry, I had to create the Dragon entry, which meant I had to discuss the 3 Dragon Havens, which went over the government systems of each of them. And don't even get me started on the timeline I had to create for this. But that doesn't explain why it took so long. Let me explain this. So every entry goes over a certain set of things like dating norms, living conditions, non-dragon cautions and need to knows, and then we go over the government sometimes, which covers the actual breakdown of the government and how they actually end up making laws. Because as we know, laws dictate what is allowed in society, like Blitz Dragon's Inheritus allows for polygamy. Well, to be fair, they don't allow monogamy, because that tends to breed culturally jealousy and a lot of possessiveness that the goddess of the void, Cypher, doesn't believe is right for a healthy society. Now, each of those sections I've mentioned has to get replicated like living conditions over each of the Dragon Havens, so Castellan, Mount Moltra, and Eritus all got an entry for that. And so when that gets replicated over every category. And so this is what my monitors look like when I'm working on it, because I have to cross-reference the Blitz Dragon entry with where I'm currently working against the actual general dragons. But if you wanted to bang a Blitz Dragon, let's talk about some lore. Did you know that if you try to bang a Blitz Dragon in Castellan, that 32% of the time, the Blitz Dragon will actually turn into whatever form you want. So if you want to be with a 7-foot orc, they got you. Or maybe you're a fan of the forest elf species with their unique reproduction system. But speaking of societal, did you know that when a human dwarf, orc, or elf, or an HDOF requested something of a Blitz Dragon, they only declined 15% of the time. So if you wanted to spit in their mouth, all right. You wanted to take the back door, front door, and then have them turn into a man and then take that? Okay. But why are they so submissive? They're dragons. Like, they are 20 feet tall. Why are they listening to you? Well, the reality is this is where politics comes into play. Because even though Hudofs are considered much lesser than any dragon type, it took a divine doctrine to acknowledge Blitz Dragons as dragons to Castellan. They literally had to have a god come in and tell them, you have to acknowledge them as a dragon. And they had to overturn policy called the True Dragon Housing that literally discriminated against Blitz Dragons, calling them akin to Drakens, aka half dragons. And it's because Skydancer dragons literally used turbo harpies as a lubricant that ended up getting one of them pregnant when mixed with the male dragon sperm, and thus popped out the very first Blitz Dragon. And Blitz Dragons have faced so much discrimination and have worked so hard for what little political power they have that they literally don't want any negative publicity when it comes to dealing with other dragons or other species, so they tend to be very docile, very agreeable. But in Mount Moltra, though, Blitz Dragons ain't about that submissive life. You talk to a Blitz Dragon sideways in Mount Moltra, they will literally treat you like a dwarf treats a human. They will knock you upside your head. They are more for equal rights, equal fights. Dwarven culture and dragon culture has meshed in Mount Moltra. And they don't ask what form you prefer as a HDOF. They will use whatever form they are comfortable with. So whether that's a Drakeen or a human or a dwarf, they're doing what they feel comfortable. And not to mention, they have a lot of toys that they bring to the party if you want to mess around with their true forms. And we don't need to have time to get into the Dragon Haven of Eritus. That is a whole can of worms that needs its own video. But if you want to support the Mating Manual, grab a Ruby Gold sub or get an original character into the lore by grabbing a diamond, because we're starting the baby eating changelings next.